record. All right, well, I am here with Gina Raney from Alpine Testing Solutions, and we're going to chat just a little bit about coaching today. So first of all, why don't you just tell people a little bit about yourself and kind of what project you're working on today?
Sure. Hi, I am Gina Raney. I am a product owner for our Cert Metrics application over at Alpine Testing. I did start my journey as a technical program manager, pivoted to this different role, and really our big project that we're working on right now is really revamping our kind of legacy software. So that's been a humongous lift for our team and our company overall.
So I think that it's interesting that all of that stuff that you just said shares a lot about what we've talked about over the last 3 months or so. But when we were first introduced, it was really kind of product manager training. So using some of my courseware and the content that I had previously created, but it sort of shifted and morphed into something a little bit different. I'd love to hear it from your own mouth. Like, how do you think it shifted?
It's shifted tremendously because it was, and from my sessions with you to kind of figure out some of the obstacles for really this big initiative that we've had, it was interesting to find out that a lot of those obstacles were either, just personal obstacles that I was putting in front of myself. It was really something that we had to look at my role, my workload, the way I prioritize, some of those tools, and just kind of a work-life balance. It's really, you don't really think about it as being essential to moving a project forward, but it really is. When you talk about just the energy that you need to bring, the qualities that you need to bring, you really do have to make sure that you're, of course, taking care of yourself, figuring out really what your position is. Are you completing tasks that are even part of your role? What are you taking on? What can be delegated? What needs to be prioritized? All of these seem like kind of really simple questions that when you're in the middle of just kind of a high priority project, you don't really have that perspective to stop and think and organize. And so kind of talking to you in these sessions, we've been able to break down kind of the root cause of certain obstacles. And I think that's been the biggest pivot for me, because we did start as, what does a product owner do? What are some tips, some tricks? If I encounter any issues, I can reach out for some feedback because you've gone through everything that anyone can possibly think of. And it was really interesting to me to find that once we started actually focusing less on the project and even less on the product and my role, and just think about me as a person, how I handle certain situations, what my strengths are, what I need to work on, that's where I've actually seen more momentum with our project. And so it's something that I never thought to tie together. And that's what's been pretty enlightening about our sessions.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask you, if we take 100% of our sessions, how much of that do you think was more operational? You mentioned like tips and tricks and like schedule. How much of it was operational, and how much of it was like Gina finally getting to know herself and sort of having a mirror of reflection to see how you show up in your job and in the world?
I would say that was maybe about 30% of it. You've always been so good about, when you see the opportunity, you'd say, hey, there's this method. Hey, try this. Hey, try that. There's always something of that nature within our sessions, which has always been really helpful. But it really has been the more, probably about there at that point, 70% of the focus has been of just, why are you responding this way? Or, let's break down that situation. Why did you have an emotional reaction to a non-emotional conversation? I mean, those type of questions just don't run through my head. And if we don't break that down, you can have a mentally and physically exhausting day that will make you not productive, just not a valuable team member even sometimes. So really, you've provided just tips and tricks beyond the actual role itself. It's, hey, this would work great in your personal life as well. I mean, there's been a lot of value that I didn't really see myself gaining outside of, hey, this is a product owner role and it's new to you. So let's talk about what that means. And I think that's what I've gained so much out of this. And I see myself incorporating it in my day to day. And that's why my days are getting better. And I think that speaks volumes to how valuable these sessions have been.
Yeah, excellent. So I was just going to ask you, maybe describe a little bit about how you felt your work life was, or even your personal life was before we started, and now, 3-4 months later. How would you say that it's changed?
To say that I was powering through a very rigorous, 9-10 hour day was pretty typical. At this point, I wouldn't say that the work is less demanding. That's not, it's your perspective, right? Now it's, yes, this is important, but it's also important for me to step away for half an hour. It's also important for me to go eat. It's also important to me to take care of myself, right? And those, you don't realize that even just taking those 30 minutes will make you more productive when you come back, instead of just powering through and feeling like you have to stare at the wall for, who knows how much time to become productive again. I mean, it really does, again, just taking care of yourself. You really, at least for me personally, I've seen more productivity just personally, but also I am able to disconnect. I love my job. I love what I do, but I also have a family and I have, a life that I like to focus on. And I've noticed that constant thinking about work after hours is really just kind of plummeting with some of these techniques that you've provided. And that's huge, because when we think about work, we want to think of it in a positive way, but if you're thinking about it after hours, it's likely causing you stress. So, I mean, when you think about your whole life, I mean, if you're not holding on to that stress, or you're not internalizing it, even, because some of our techniques have been to just talk about it and have a conversation with someone to figure out whether it's even something worth stressing about. It really does impact the people around you. So it could be your family, your husband, your kids. I've noticed that I am there after hours as opposed to what I was before our session started.
Wow, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. For someone who says self-care, like, I don't have time to get my real job done, how or why should I build time in for self-care? What would you say to that person?
I would say that, if you're not incorporating any type of self-care, it's not sustainable. Your workload, your life in general, I mean, you have to put yourself before your position, your company, no matter how great that company is. I work for an amazing organization, but when you work with specific individuals that also value that type of level of care, they can provide you with a good kind of guidance of you have to put yourself first, but no one's going to make you do that. If you don't stop and give yourself 30 minutes, no one's going to tell you to go do that. So it's kind of holding yourself accountable, right? And whether it's, I think when people think self-care, they're like, oh, I'm not going to go get a massage, I'm not going to go do this. And that could be a form of self-care for someone, but for me, it was as simple as taking 30 minutes to go eat lunch every day. That is my self-care during work hours. So it's also that spectrum of, don't think it's a foot massage, even if it's just, I need to not look at my computer screens for 30 minutes. I'm going to go take an hour to go outside and feel the sun today. It's going to mean different things for different people, but I think everyone would be really surprised at how beneficial that can be, because I've definitely had the days where it's 5 p.m. and I felt the first rays of sunshine on me that day. And I realized I needed to be outside. I needed to touch the grass. I needed to just stand outside for a little bit. So taking care of yourself, again, no one's going to do that for you. So you really should hold yourself accountable, because whether it's work that's counting on you, your family, I mean, you have to prioritize your health.
I can remember, I was going back through our notes, and I can remember one of the first sessions when I asked you to close your eyes and just take 10 deep breaths sitting at your chair. And you did that. And I said, when's the last time that you did that? And you said, I don't think I've ever done that. And that 10 simple deep breaths sitting at your chair with your eyes closed, that is as much self-care sometimes as going and getting a massage, and requires a lot less effort. So, and I think that you're in a unique situation, in that your company does care about self-care. They value self-care. They actually allowed you to use your professional service, or professional development dollars, to work with me, which I absolutely appreciate. And I've worked with Alpine for a long time now, and I love them. What would you say? I'm going to ask maybe two questions. What would you say the best thing, the most beneficial thing for you coming out of this work was, and maybe the most unexpected thing?
I would say I do feel like I've gotten to know myself better through these sessions, because you don't stop to think about why, you know, certain characteristics exist in you, or you don't stop to think about, why did I react this way, or why do I feel the need to do this? There's really always a why. We just don't stop to think about it. So I thought it was really fascinating when you would ask some of these questions that I never really put any thought into it, and then broke it down. And it really does, just reflecting on certain root causes was really huge for me, because it kind of lined a lot of things into place. And now I'm able to cue into that in my daily work, life. I'm able to stop and go, oh, I recognize what's happening here, and this is how I'm going to respond to it. So it's almost being just more self-aware. And it's really beneficial, because I want to be a certain way at work. I want to enjoy my work day. I don't want to be physically exhausted at the end of a work day. Sometimes you're going to have hard days, but if you don't have kind of this knowledge of kind of who you are, these valuable techniques that you can incorporate into your day, it's again, it's not sustainable. I felt like I was in a path where what I was doing was not sustainable, and I didn't know how to approach that. And so I would say one of the really unexpected things was just learning how simple some of these techniques were. There were certain, exercises that you provided in terms of, you can try this, you can try that. During one of our sessions, you told me to just go sit outside for 30 minutes. And it's one of those things you don't stop and think, you're at your workstation, you're not just going to stop and go sit outside for 30 minutes. It's not going to cross your mind. So there were certain times where, you stepped in and you said, this is what you need right now. You need to disconnect and you need to go do this, whether it's by doing this, doing that, you always gave options. So that was really nice. It wasn't just, this is a technique that needs to work. And I think that's what was really cool. There were a lot of you know, kind of work related techniques that I've been incorporating into my day, which I thought I was pretty fascinated by that, because I don't think about breathing techniques and how it will help me in a very stressful situation. And it really does. And I believe that the first time you actually ordered me to do something like that, you said, today you're going to take a lunch. And I looked at my schedule and I think I visibly hyperventilated. And I said, I don't know if I can do that today. And to see where I am now versus where I started, I think we've made so much progress. And I by no means I'm gonna say I'm, exactly where I want to be. I know where I want to be. And now I feel honestly more capable of getting there. Whereas when we started, I thought, how am I gonna do this? So it's been great.
Yeah. Well, if there's any final words, or for anyone who is on the fence about potentially coaching, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that, you're only going to get as much out of it as you're going to really put into it. It's one thing, again, holding yourself accountable. You can give me techniques left and right, but if I don't incorporate them into my routine, I'm not going to see any progress. If I don't, you know, open up. I would also encourage people to kind of try to be an open book in these discussions, because if you hold back, you really, again, don't get to that root cause, or
Yeah.
you don't figure out why there are certain aspects of, your workday that you just can't handle. And you're not able to help them in those situations if they're not, being as open as they can be. So I hope I was as open as I could have been, but based on already some of the payback that I've been seeing, I think it was just absolutely worthwhile. So when I hear coaching, of course, I have just no background in any type of coaching. I always thought, sports metaphors come into mind. But when we did this whole coaching thing, I thought, oh, this is great. He's worked with the company before, he's been a product owner before. So it was like a very unique kind of opportunity for us to work together, but it went so much more beyond that. I just did not expect it. It really, when we started talking, I thought, oh, cool. I have all of these work related questions, processes and product and marketing. And I mean, we pivoted so far from that, but it was what I needed. And I think that's, again, what was so surprising to me, is that's not what I expected to get out of this, but it's been so incredibly valuable. I mean, even to say that my husband's grateful for some of the changes that have been happening, it's been really great.
Wonderful. Well, and I remember also we were supposed to work the entire year. So we were going to do one session a month for the entire year. And after two sessions, I said, you know what, it might be an opportunity to do this weekly and you'll get a lot more out of this. And I'm so thankful that both of us have the ability and the time in our offering to do it weekly, because I think that a little more intensity and your honesty and openness and willingness to do the work, I think really paid off. So
Yeah, and I really appreciate you kind of catering that, because I I th- I agree. I think we were quick to see that, once a month was not kind of enough of a touch point for us to really see progress. Not that there wasn't progress happening, it was just going to be happening at a lot slower
yeah.
pace. So thank you for recommending that. And I agree, that was absolutely the right strategy to take. And everything's been so fresh in my mind that when we walk through it, or we kind of dig into items, they're so fresh in my mind that I'm really able to benefit from the sessions and the feedback that you have. And again, you have so much experience that it's funny to see when I'm talking about a specific scenario, you've always been there. And so not only do you have recommendations, but you have specific scenarios where you say, I was there, this is what happened in my situation. And that's always really helpful, because it's one thing for someone to just tell you, try this, try that, but it's also good to hear that you're human too, and you've had your own moments where you said, oh yeah, this
Oh
is
yeah.
bound to happen. And so
I
we're not
I actually created some of the problems that you're probably still dealing with at Alpine, so I'll take some responsibility for that as well.
no.
Well, I know that you probably got to go to your next meeting, but thank you so much for your time and for taking a few minutes to share this with some potential prospects of mine. And I wish you the best.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, take care.